Alright, so we are going to be multiplying binomials today. So before we start, I want to take a look at algebra tiles. Alright, so here we have our algebra tiles. So this blue square is known as x squared. The red one is negative x squared. The green rectangle is x, and the red one is negative x. And that yellow square is a 1, while the red square, little one, is a negative 1. Okay, so anytime you have red, that means it's negative of whatever that shape is. So if we look here, when we see a whole bunch of algebra tiles together in this format, we add them together. So in this case, we have 1x squared. We have 3 x's. We have 2 1s, so that gives me 2, plus a negative 1. 2 minus 1 gives me 1, so I can rewrite this as x squared plus 3x plus 1. So that's what this is representative of. Alright, so we are multiplying two binomials. So a binomial is something that has two terms. And so if we look here, x plus 3, x is one term, 3 is another term because there's addition in between. So that's two terms. If we were to look over here, we have x plus 2. X is one term, 2 is another term. So that is another binomial, and we're multiplying them together. So if we look at the top part here, right here, we can see we have 1x for our algebra tile, and then we have 3 yellow squares. Those represent 3. So that's our first binomial is on the top there. And along the side here, we have x plus 2. So that's where, right here, that's our second binomial. So if we multiply together, we are multiplying our x times x, and that's going to give us x squared. We multiply our x times our 1 up here, that's going to give us x. If we use x times our 1 again, we're going to get another x. And now we're going to fill in down below here, so we have our x times our 1 gives us this x. X times this 1 gives us another x. And we're looking at 1 right on up here. Right here times this 1 gives us 1, and so on. So you're just filling in what these things multiply to. And so if we look here, we have an x squared. So I'm going to write that over here. We have x squared. We have 3 x's right here. Those are bad x's. So plus 3x. Down here we have 2 x's. And right here we have 6 1s. So plus 6. And now I'm going to combine like terms. So I see that I have a 3x and a 2x, and those add to give me 5x. I don't have any other constants, so I'm going to bring down the plus 6, and I don't have any other x squareds, so I'm going to bring down my x squared. And that right there is my answer. So that's how we can multiply using our algebra tiles. Alright. So now here, if we look at, this is the same problem, but we can do this in another way. So if we use a box method, so it kind of looks like Foursquare, and this is very similar to algebra tiles. We're just going to instead be using x's instead of the shapes. So I'm going to take that first binomial and write it along the top. So I have x plus 3. And then along the side, I'm going to write that second one. So I have x plus 2. And so I'm going to look here, and I have an x times an x gives me x squared. I have a 3 times an x gives me 3x. I have 2 times x gives me 2x. And I have 3 times 2 gives me 6. So I'm going to take everything that's written on the inside and I'm going to write them below. So I have x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 6. So each of these boxes is being added together. And you can see we have some like terms. We have 3x and 2x. Those combine to become 5x. And there's no other constant, so I bring down the plus 6. And there's no other x squared, so I bring down x squared. So that is our answer. Another way that we can do this is called FOIL. So first, outer, inner, last is what that FOIL stands for. And so if we look at our binomials here, the first terms in each one, that's this x times this x. That's going to give us x squared. Those are our first terms. Then we're going to look at the outer terms. We have our x times our 2, which gives us plus 2x. And then we're going to look at the inner terms. So we have 3 times x, gives me 3x. And then I'm going to look at my last terms. 3 times 2, which gives me 6. This is just like using the distributive property. We're making sure that every term is being multiplied through. And so when we combine like terms here, we have 2x plus 3x gives us 5x. And then we have plus 6 and x squared plus 5x plus 6. That's our final answer. So if we were to look at this one, we have x plus 3 equals x minus 8. So let's use the box method with that. So here's my box, and I'm going to write that first binomial up on top. So I have x plus 3. And then along the side, I'm going to have x minus 8. Okay, so we have our x times x gives me x squared. X times positive 3 gives me 3x. X times negative 8. So this minus sign here goes with that 8. That's important. So x times negative 8 gives me negative 8x. And then I'm looking at, that was those two terms. And then if I look at negative 8 times positive 3, that gives me negative 24. So now I'm going to write all that out. So I get x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 24. I'm going to combine like terms. So positive 3x minus negative, let me repeat that, 3x minus 8x. So we have that negative right there. That gives us negative 5x. There's no other constant, so I bring down my negative 24. And there's no other x squared, so I bring down my x squared. And that right there is my answer. If we want to use FOIL, then I'm looking at my first terms. That's x times x. All right. X times x. Let me undo that. Okay, so x times x gives us x squared. And then we look at our outer terms. So x times negative 8 gives us negative 8x. Then we look at the inner terms. 3 times x gives us 3x. And our last terms give 3 times negative 8 gives us negative 24. Don't forget those negative signs. And now I'm going to combine our like terms here. So we have negative 8x plus 3x, and that gives us negative 5x. I don't have any other constants, so I bring down negative 24, and my x squared, there's no other x squared, so he comes down as well. And that's my answer. So we get the same answer no matter which way we go. So this is your choice. So you can either choose to use box method, you can choose to use FOIL. Those algebra tiles are just another visual. It's kind of like box method. So on this next one, we'll do another one with algebra tiles, so you kind of get a feel for how you go about doing that. And so here, once again, we have 2x plus 1, that's one binomial, times x minus 3. So if we look along the top here, we have 2x plus 1 over here along the side we have x minus 3. So notice how we have those red squares. Those mean they're negative. All right. And so if we look here, we have our x times x gives us x squared. X times x gives us another x squared. And 1 times x gives us this x here. And now if we look here, we have positive x times a negative 1 gives us that negative x. So be sure to remember when you have those negatives, you're going to get negative times positive gives us a negative. And so here we have those. Negative times an x, negative x. And then we have negative 1 times positive 1 gives us a negative 1. And we have that a few more times. All right. So if we were to write this out, this is an x squared. Here's another x squared. So I'm going to just write off to the side. We have x squared plus x squared plus I see 1 positive x. And then down here I have negative 6x. And then I have right here, this is negative 3. I'm going to write them right below. Okay. If we combine our like terms, so here I have an x squared and an x squared, that's going to give me 2x squared. If I look at my x's, I have an x. Oh, that did not show up. Let's see. That didn't show up either. Okay, I have x times negative 6x. Or sorry, x plus negative 6x. All right, that gives me negative 5. I want the white. There we go. That gives me negative 5x. And then I have minus 3. So that right there, that's my final answer. If we use this using box method, we're going to set it up similarly. So we have 2x and then plus 1 along the top and x minus 3 along the side. Now, if you had written it so that they were opposite, we had x minus 3 along the top like this, and then 2x and plus 1 over here on the side, that will get you the same answer. It doesn't matter whether you put the first binomial on top or the bottom. I tend to put it on the top, but we can do it this way too. So here we have our 2x times x gives me 2x squared. And then I'm looking at negative 3 times 2x gives me negative 6x. I have positive 1 times x gives me x. And I have negative 3 times positive 1 gives me negative 3. So now I'm going to go ahead and add these all together. So I have 2x squared plus a negative 6x plus x minus 3. I can combine those x's, so I'm going to get 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. That right there is my answer. All right, you can also use this using FOIL. So if we look here, 2x times x gives me 2x squared. The outer terms, 2x times negative 3 right here, that gives me negative 6x. Those inner terms are 1 times x, that gives me positive x. And the last terms are 1 times negative 3, which gives me negative 3x. Or sorry, no, just negative 3. There's no x there. All right. So when we combine like terms here, we get 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. So remember, it's up to you which way you want to use, all right? So you can use box method, you can use FOIL. If you want to use algebra tiles, feel free to do so. Some problems, the numbers might get really high with algebra tiles, so you'll eventually want to move on to like using box method. So with that, you guys can go ahead and get started on your practice.